Thank you.
I hope we have enough space because we'll see, God willing. So Dina, I apologize for not being able to go over the previous. Your mom will explain it all to you. How's that? Okay. So I'd like to share with you an alternative understanding why the word life is in the plural based on the verse Genesis chapter 2, verse 18. It is not good for man to be alone. I'll make a helper fit for him. Now, normally, as I'm sure we all know, we're talking about Adam and Eve. To live life, because God said, it's not good for a person to be alone. You have to have a spouse. To live life to its fullest means sharing blessings, works, and dreams with someone else. Alone, life is not complete. So how does this relate? Because in Hebrew, the word chayim, I spelt it wrong, I apologize. It is composed of 4 letters. The outside 2 letters is chet and mem. And in Hebrew, that means cham, which means warm. Physical life is determined merely by a warm body, 98.6 degrees. Cham, warm. But spiritually, a person is alive spiritually if they have 2 yuds inside. The 2 yuds represents one of God's names. To be alive, one must also have God on the inside. Cham, warm body on the outside. What's inside? Godliness. So if you want, I can perhaps show you the previous. And here you can see, here's the letter chet, and here is the letter mem. So on the right and on the left, you've got a physical warm body, but here you have the 2 yuds. And yud is one of God's abbreviations of his name. That you want to really be alive, you have to make sure that you understand that life is based on a physical body and a spiritual body as well, a spiritual soul. Now, what happens when the cham, the physical part is in demise, and when we pass away, the cham might cease, but the spiritual part, the yud, our soul continues to live. And where does this go? What happens after we die? This is what we're going to be studying in the next number of weeks. This is really to give you insight into where we're going to be going with the series of classes. Again, one of the most important things that we can study, we're studying the mystical concept of life after death. It's not a physical discussion. It's not biochemical. It's not about biology. It's about spirituality. So I wanted to emphasize with you gematria and spirituality because it gives us insight to what our culture for over 2,500 years, been recorded 2,500 years, not only in the Torah, not only in scriptures, but also through Talmudically what the rabbis have observed and inculcated into the process of our spiritual attitude that makes us Jews these millennia. So the gematria of the word chayim is 68. Chet is 8 and yud is 10. So that's where 18 comes from, chai, and then yud is 10. So that's 18 and 10 is 28, and mem is 40. So the total is 68. Now, there are 2 other famous words in Hebrew that have the same gematria of 68. Banav, which means his children, vayivein, and he built. So what does this have to do? We're talking about life after death and continuity and living after this world. The difference here is that a person may leave behind their life's legacy by having children or leaving behind institutions that are a glory to their positive aspirations and good deeds. So for example, a lot of people say, oh, I don't have any children, I'm going to be forgotten. So let me ask you a question. This isn't rhetorical. If you know the answer, yell it out. Raise your hand or just yell out, how many children did the Lubavitcher Rebbe have?
0.
That or 1.2 million?
Yeah.
If you ask the Lubavitchers, they'll tell you, oh, approximately a million, 1.2 million. We know for a fact that he definitely raised a number of children, Holocaust survivors, or arranged for them. So my point to you is very specific, that it's not only about your children. Sometimes it's what you leave behind. You know how many yeshivas the Lubavitcher Rebbe built? 275 yeshivas he's responsible for. How many Jewish souls? I'll give you a hint. He's gone over 25 years and there's still people influenced by him and going to yeshiva and studying Torah. So there is that concept that what you leave behind makes you eternal. What you leave behind, what's the correct term, is your legacy. However, there are those who say we live on eternally after we die by what we leave behind. Look at all these graphic mistakes I made. I apologize. Usually my speller, my spell check catches them. So that's, by the way, I have to tell you, I don't want anyone to think I'm being critical, but in the Reform movement, they don't believe in the eternity of the soul. And we're going to be discussing that in a short while. It's not a concept that is part of their philosophy. And if you were to ask them, oh, by the way, let me see if I can just shut. I'm going to actually stop sharing for a second. I'm going to share something different. Let's see if I can find it even. Give me a moment, because when I read it, it was quite upsetting. Let me go to my history. And I apologize, I can't find it. So, here it is, history. Here it is. Deborah, tell me if you found this. Let me go back here and share it with you. Tell me if you saw this very upsetting. Anyone see this? Yeah. Election of atheist Harvard chaplain to leadership role continues to stir up controversy. There is a rabbi by the name of Greg Epstein who graduated from the International Humanistic Rabbinic Seminary of America, something like that. And he's, according to them, he's a rabbi, but they don't believe in God. And now he's the head chaplain. So frequently you see this in the Reform movement, where they don't believe in life after death. They don't believe in the eternity of the soul. So then why do you do good deeds? They don't believe there's punishment. They don't believe in reward after death. So then why are you supposed to do good deeds? And the answer is, they'll tell you this. This is a very important doctrine in the Reform movement. You do good deeds because you're supposed to do good deeds, and not because there's a reward or punishment. In actuality, I understand that, and I teach that to my own children and now to my grandchildren. You do the right thing, not because you're going to be rewarded, but okay, fine. It doesn't mean there's not life after death, and it doesn't mean there isn't a reward. So in Judaism, that's one of the things that we emphasize. That, let me rephrase that. In traditional Judaism, one of the things that we emphasize is that no, there is a concept of life after death, and there is a reward and punishment for not doing so. Now, I want to make sure that everyone understands that this concept is very, very ancient, and it's not only limited to the mystics. So, for example, Rambam Maimonides is definitively what we would call one of the least messianic, supernatural, rabbinic authorities of the last 2,000 years. So, for example, Shlachim Kaporis, taking a chicken and swinging it around your head, he absolutely thought that was horrible. Horrible. He thought it was idolatrous. And similar traditions, he really did not abide by. He thought they were foolish because he was a rationalist, because he was a scientist, he was a physician. He believed in the observed reality. Now, here's the whole thing. If you look at number 13, he had 13 principles of faith. And for those of you who have been studying with Rabbi Josh, he's been studying these for the last year. If you look at number 13, it's one of the things that we're going to be touching on is he believed in the resurrection of the dead. It's his 13th principle. He believes in the resurrection of the dead, that after death, we're not exactly, we're going to get into it. What does that mean, resurrection of the dead? That we actually get back into a physical body, or do we live on, but we are conscious and we're cognitive and we're sentient, but in a different life form. So we're not exactly there yet, but when we get to that week, we're going to discuss also what is defined by resurrection of the dead. But what you should definitely get from this one particular slide that I'm sharing with you now, historically, Rambam, who was an Aristotelian in his attitude towards Judaism, Aristotle was like the scientist of the philosophy of science and the science of philosophy. For example, I'll give you insight into how controversially scientific Rambam was. Rambam initially said that when the Messiah comes and the temple is rebuilt, he will no longer bring animal sacrificing, because animal sacrificing is very barbaric. And that he said, we are on a much higher level now, that we've left behind the sacrificing of animals when we sin. Instead, we are in a higher level using prayer. And you know what happened? They started burning his books. Jews all over the world started burning his books. So what did Maimonides do? He printed a retraction and he sent it out all over the world. Many years later, his son asked him, why did he retract? Does he now believe that when the Messiah comes, that there will be animal sacrificing? He says, no, I don't believe that. So then why did you retract it? He said, because it's better they should read my books than burn my books. But how does this relate to belief in the resurrection of the dead? He never had to, he was never forced to say this. It wasn't like he was being, cajoled into making a statement, retracting his attitude about ritual sacrifice. No, he believed in the resurrection of the dead. In fact, even if he was like playing to the crowd, even if he was preaching to the choir, he didn't have to include it in the 13 principles of faith. He could have, there are lots of things he taught that he didn't include in the principles of faith. He actually says here that resurrection of the dead is a fundamental principle that defines us as Jews, that we believe, we're going to get to it, that the body and the soul are not only affected and effective in this world that we call life, and that after this life, obviously, we are resurrected either spiritually or, and it's not allegorical, but it's actually, we're going to get to that and see about that possibility. Before I go on, I just want to look around and see if yes, Michael, by the way, does everyone know how to raise their hand electronically, just in case? Because when I have the slides up, I can't see everyone. So Michael, I just saw that you have your hand on, so it's a good thing that I am taking a break to answer questions. Dr. Michael Seitcher.
Okay, so then did he accept the principle that Jesus was resurrected after his crucifixion?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
So why one resurrection and not another resurrection?
Well, first of all, the belief that in the resurrection didn't really, if you really want to be very clinical about it, in approximately 400 of the Common Era, there's something called the Nicene Convention. And only then, literally 370 years after Jesus was dead, did they come up with the idea about, interpreting the Bible, including a resurrection story. And in case you aren't aware, there were scores of Christian texts that were not incorporated into what they call the Gospels or the Christian Bible. And among them were books that were holy and, up until that point, but didn't claim that he was resurrected. And what happens is the church already developed And during the Nicene Creed, they decided to throw away any of those holy books that did not deify Jesus and did not include a resurrection story. For example, there were stories that Jesus was married to Mary Magdalene. And what happens was they were thrown away, and they would kill you. They would burn you at the stake. You would disappear in the middle of the night if you taught any of those subjects or anything. No, absolutely not. And the proof is that nowhere in the Torah does it talk about resurrection of the dead for one person. It's everyone, all the righteous. There's no such thing as resurrection of just one. Okay? And resurrection of the dead is part of the messianic fulfillment. So for example, Isaiah said, the Mashiach will come, and there is a series of things that are going to occur immediately afterwards. My favorite one is, and a child shall sit at the den of an asp. It's like a rattlesnake, and play with the rattlesnake, and the sheep will lie down with the lion. Okay. Now, regardless if it's allegorical or if it's actually prophetic, it basically means that there'll be peace in the world and no more war and no more killing. So in the last 2025 years, has there ever been a period of time when there's actually been worldwide peace? And the answer is no. So as far as Judaism is concerned, Jesus couldn't have been the Messiah because not one of the prophecies, either Isaiah or Hosea or Ezekiel or Jeremiah, none of the prophecies were ever fulfilled. So so Jesus could not have been. Look, I think Christianity is a great religion for Christians. It's a little sidebar, but I will tell you, 2,000 years ago, after Jesus's death, there were two disciples that were going in two different directions. One was Paul, and the other one was Simon. Okay, and the question was, Paul wanted to only, he was actually, he wanted to bring Christianity to the Gentile world. Why? Because they were sacrificing their children, because they were committing adultery. They were marrying, they were intimate with their children. And they said, the Gentiles of the world need Christianity. And he was right. And Simon said, no, Jesus came to the Jews. Jesus didn't go to the Gentiles. Jesus preached, all of his preaching were to Jews, not even to Samaritans. So it was a schism in the church, the early church, the first generation church. So the whole point is that I want to emphasize that Rambam did not, trust me, believe in any way whatsoever a knowledgeable Jew. I'm not being critical of Christianity. I'm just saying that Christianity and Jesus was not a fulfillment of any prophetic vision of life after death or resurrection. So those are very good questions. So any other questions that you have for me? And again, we have over 30 people here, but I can't see everyone's hand. So unmute yourself and just yell if I don't see you, okay? So let's get back to the...
There is a hand up.
Oh, there is a hand up. Bakasha, whose hand? Go ahead, yell.
Rabbi, I'm in the car.
Okay, George. Oh, there it is.
Rabbi, 3 times a day, we say in the Amida, Michayeh HaMetim.
In fact, it's one of my slides tonight. Thank you, George. Excellent.
Right.
You Mesivta boy. Does everyone know that George went to Mesivta?
I didn't go to Mesivta. I went to 9th grade.
Oh, okay. So you know what your father was saying? Oh, thank God. Today a year of Hebrew Academy is $30,000. You know what he's saying to himself? Oh, thank God, $100,000 not wasted.
Yeah, but back then it wasn't that.
Yeah, I said in today's dollars, right?
They wanted me to go to Yeshiva of Skokie, and he said no.
That was a good yeshiva. Any other questions, Chevra? Don't worry. Any other questions? All right, good. So let's get back to
That is a great yeshiva.
Who's that? It doesn't have a name. iPad 4.
It's Irwin.
And Ileana.
Oh, Irwin. It is a great yeshiva. Wait, Irwin, did you go to Skokie?
I did, 4 years.
There's a Rabbi Small there and a Rabbi Leff.
Before my time, you're showing your age.
Okay, sorry.
Rabbi
I'm an old man,
Soloveitchik-
you're right.
Rabbi
right.
Soloveitchik was there when I was there.
Of course, yeah, that's the obvious one. All right, so let's continue. Let's go over what the first thing a Jew says when you wake up in the morning and you're cognizant. That means if you don't know where you are, like sometimes you wake up and you say, oh, where am I? Oh, what time is it? You're not cognizant. But as soon as you sit up in bed, you say, I'm Elliot Perlson. I'm in 575 South Shore Drive. And today is Tuesday. Then you know what you're supposed to say? Modeh ani lefanecha, melachai v'kayam, shechazarta bi nishmati b'chema rabba amunatecha. And I want you to look at the exact translation. It's the first thing we say. I give thanks before you, living and eternal King, who has returned my soul into me in compassion. Great is your faithfulness. So there's a number of things you have to note when you say modeh. One, the first thing you have to acknowledge is that God gave you a soul and that your soul now is back in you. And great is God's faithfulness, which means thank you, God, for having faith with me. It's like, your kid is going off to school, right? And he needs $5 for lunch money and you give him $10. What are you giving him $10 for? You have faith he's going to use it appropriately. So when God returns your soul into your body, thank you, God, for having faith in me that I'm going to use this soul appropriately. You gave me $10. I'm not going to buy, a marijuana cigarette. I'm not going to, spend it on candy. I'm going to use it. Thank you, God, for having faith in me. So let's talk for a few minutes about shehechazarta bi, that you have returned my soul into my body every morning. So I have to tell you, when I first learned this many, many, many years ago, the rabbi that taught it to me, Rabbi Pinchas Klein, he was actually from Montreal and he was fluent in French. And he taught us the term le petit moi. And I've never had the opportunity to teach this in a class because, it's been kind of, this is a less intimate group, I think. But le petit moi means the little death in French. And so there are some philosophers say that sleep is the little death. What does that mean? You're laying down, you're flat, you're horizontal, you don't eat, you don't sleep, you don't eat, you don't drink, you don't hear anything, you don't speak, you're not doing anything. You're laying flat. And in fact, sometimes when you're sleeping too heavily, you know what your loved one might do? Come over and see if you're breathing, right? They'll put a mirror in front of your nose. Oh my gosh, they're sleeping so heavy. So le petit moi means the little death. So what is the little death? The idea is in Judaism and mystical teaching, your soul learns and grows and meets the physical world at your five senses. Your soul, let's say you're 5 years old and you've never smelled what's it called? The herb, saffron?
Sassafras.
Saffron.
Saffron, thank you.
Oh, saffron.
Saffron, thank you. By the way, this is what happens 8 o'clock at night, I guess. I start losing words. So saffron. So let's say you're a kid, or let's say you grew up, in some country that doesn't have saffron. I think it's one of the most, it's really expensive. It's really unique. So what happens is, where does your soul learn what saffron smells like? The answer is through one of your five senses. Your soul learns what saffron is. And then your eyes look at it, and I think it's yellow, right? So that's what saffron looks like. That's what saffron smells like. And then you taste it, you put it on your tongue, right? It's a little sticky, and that's what it feels like. So your soul learns and grows and meets the physical world at your five senses. What happens while you're sleeping? While you're sleeping, your five souls are put on hold. They're on pause. Obviously, you're not eating, you're not drinking, you're not talking, you're not tasting anything. And by the way, there's something called accommodation. Do you ever see a person, I'm sure maybe you've seen it. I used to be amazed as a person from Miami. You get on a train in New York City on the subway, and the train, the volume is like 70 or 80 decibels. It's crazy loud. And look carefully, there are people sleeping. How could you sleep with so much noise? Listen, I know I have family members that can't sleep unless the television is on. And now I'm going into a third generation, with what do they call baby monitors that produce white noise. People can't go to sleep without white noise. So the reality of it is, it's called accommodation. When you have a consistent noise, your body, brain turns off. You don't even hear it anymore. So what happens is when you're sleeping, though your 5 senses are shut down. That means your soul is not learning anything. You're not learning how to smell something. You're not learning a new song. You're not everything is like shut down. So literally, your physical body is relaxing, but your soul is bored. So
Okay,
you know what happens when you're sleeping? Your soul migrates. And that is why dreams in Judaism are so important. Because when you're sleeping, your soul is bored. Your 5 senses is not teaching it anything. So it migrates, it leaves your body, and it exists at a higher plane. And because it exists at a higher plane, dreams are very important. Now, I'll give you an example of how important dreams are. I kind of gave it away, but there are only 2 times you're allowed to fast on Shabbat. What's the first one? Yom Kippur. When Yom Kippur falls on Shabbat, we fast. And the second time that you're allowed to fast on Shabbat is if Friday night you have an evil dream and you want to fast as a kapara, as an atonement. Why? Because your soul is elevated and it's not restricted or limited to a physical plane of existence. And because your soul is up higher, its spiritual insights are more acute. And that's why you're allowed to fast on Shabbat if you had an evil dream Friday night. Now, getting back to the Modeh Ani, now you understand why it is our concept that while you're sleeping, you have a physical body and a spiritual body. And this is a little death. The soul can leave your body during sleep. And right here, we acknowledge our Jewish philosophy that the soul is not permanently tied. It takes a break, and it leaves the room for a while. While you're taking a nap or sleeping, your soul migrates to a higher plane of existence. And then shechazarta bi nishmati. As soon as you sit up and you know where you are, you know who you are, you know what day it is, you know where you are, who you are. Now your soul is totally back in your body. You have to thank God.
So Rabbi, what the same thing happens when we put a patient under anesthesia?
I don't understand.
Okay, well, if you put a patient under anesthesia, you don't feel, you don't, all you have is respiration, but you're not learning anything. It's like sleeping, essentially. In fact, it is called twilight sleep.
Okay, so it's not my area. I don't know if it's the same. I'm not familiar with the spiritual aspect of that. I think it's induced. So, okay, I see 3 hands up. So why don't we start with Debbie Goldenberg, then Aida, and then back to George.
When you talk about your soul being elevated, does it then meet up with other souls?
So I don't mind jumping ahead, and it's a great question. So I'm going to jump ahead a number of weeks. So one night we're going to talk about the post-death episode, which means that people who have been clinically pronounced dead, and we have members of the shul who are clinically pronounced dead. and they saw themselves in an out-of-body experience. They saw themselves in the room over their bodies. And they repeated to us afterwards an argument that occurred in the surgical room. And afterwards, he said to the doctor and his nurse, I know you guys were fighting when I died under anesthesia. You were fighting with the anesthesiologist over whose fault it was. Word for word. And that he was clinically dead at that time. So the whole point is that he saw himself looking down. We have another member of the synagogue that actually migrated, went to another place and saw something occurring at another family member's home very far away. But I have to tell you that if anyone here, and again, we have a lot of people here in class tonight, have you ever, I'm sure you don't have to raise your hand. This is a rhetorical question. I fainted. Lots of people have fainted. People have fainted. And right before, I fainted more than once. And right before you faint, you get tunnel vision. Your peripheral vision goes dark and there's like light right in front of you, and then you pass out. So one of the interesting things about the post-death episode is that people see themselves walking down a dark tunnel. At the end of the dark tunnel is a white light. And what physiologists say and doctors say, oh, that's a phenomena of anoxia, lack of oxygen to the brain. That's what happens when you faint, and that's what these people are saying. Okay, fine. Then how does that explain when I faint, I didn't meet anyone? And how about the people who died and they meet people? Why do they only meet people who have died? If it's just an hallucination, then they should also meet people that are alive and talking to them. So what happens in these people, in fact, Brian Weiss discusses that. I stole that right from him. But now that I mentioned him, it's not stealing. So the question is, if it's just a hallucination, then I should meet, my wife, my brother, my sister, anyone who's alive that should then say to me, no, don't go away, stay. No, it's always dead people. So interesting phenomena that is an aspect that cannot be rationalized using our understanding of biochemistry. Aida, your hand is still up, and I think George's hand is also still up. Aida?
I firmly believe in dreams, and I believe that they give you messages. But what happens when you wake up and you say, oh my God, I had this dream, I need to remember, and then you don't? Then how do you do something about it? Or how do you react to if you have a bad dream, like you say, then you can fast to make it not happen. But what if at the second you wake up, you know it, and then it's not there anymore?
If it's really bad, you'll remember it. That's the good news.
Okay.
If it's something that's really important, that you remember. It proves that it's just inconsequential. Because if it's really bad. Okay, George, I think you had your hand up. Am I mistaken? Okay. Chevra, again, don't hesitate because we only have like 15 minutes left. And then actually the last few minutes, I'll also give everyone the opportunity to ask more questions. So let's continue. Okay. The next slide. I want to continue with this whole concept of the very first things we do in the morning. It's sort of like, if you think about it, I have a very particular spiritual regimen in the morning, and it's interfaced with my physical regimen. So, as long as we're talking Torah, nothing's inappropriate. I sit up, I put my feet on the bed, I say Modan Yilifanecha, I look at my wife and I thank God for my wife, and then I thank God for my wife and my children, and I thank God for my community. Then I get up, and you go to the bathroom. Okay, fine. Then I wash my hands and I make a bracha, I make a series of brachas. And then I say this. So wait, let's, as long as we're studying Torah, let me teach you Torah, because more and more important as we get older and older. when I was a young man, I used to shrug it off and think it was funny, but there's a bracha you make after you go to the bathroom. After you urinate or defecate, there's a bracha you make. And I cannot emphasize it enough, because in the last 2 weeks, I've had to deal with people who have been suffering, men and women, from all types of problems. And I taught them to that particular bracha to them, because our physical and spiritual bodies are extremely intertwined. And I mention that because you have to develop a regimen that really helps you coordinate the most physical aspects of your body. Think about it. What could be more physical than urinating and defecating, washing your hands, and then turning it into a spiritual event? So the more we think about life and death, the purely physical body and the spiritual aspects, you're really going to learn about a Jewish attitude towards life and death. Life has all of these things. You eat, you sleep, you drink, etc. Guess what? We can turn it all into making our souls aware of our physical, spiritual unity and partnership, so that we can understand what happens after the physical life. So this is the second thing that I personally, it's very important to me. And let's go over it really quickly. Elohai, my dear God, Ata, you gave me a soul. Neshama shenatata li, I see the Hebrew got messed up. The soul that you gave unto me, you fashioned it. You breathed it into me. You safeguarded it within me. And eventually you will take it from me. You see that? God, you fashioned it, you made it, and you put it into me, and you're keeping it safe within me. But eventually, I'm not sure how that happened. Eventually, you will take it from me. But I'm grateful to you, O Lord. My Father and God of my forefathers, Master of all works, Lord of all souls, blessed are you, O Lord our God. You are going to hamachazir nishamot lifkarim metim. You are going to return souls to those who have perished, to those who have died. Okay, I have to fix that. I don't know what happened to it, but here there's, oh, I know what happened. It's supposed to be in red, and instead it stayed white. But up here you can see, thank you, God, because you are going to hamachazir nisham. What's nishama? Souls.
Oh,
Hamachazir nishamat. God, you are going to return souls lifkarim metim, to those who have been suffered with death. So again, throughout the first moments of every day, we acknowledge that we have a physical body and a spiritual body. You have a Kiddush cup of silver and wine that is in the Kiddush cup. So you look at the silver Kiddush cup and you, oh, that's the ikar, that's the important thing. No, what's really important is the wine. You look at the body, the body is what's good. No, it's the soul that is inside the Kiddush cup, inside the body. There's only one issue. What happens if you don't have a silver Kiddush cup? What are you going to do? You can't, there's no way to hold, there's no vessel to hold the wine. The body is as important to the soul as the Kiddush cup is to the wine. But without wine, it's just a silver cup that's useless. What do you need a silver cup for if you're never going to pour anything in it and never drink from it? So that is a very good allegory to understand the importance and the relationship between the physical body and the spiritual neshama, is that the wine inside the silver Kiddush cup. And that's why the first things we do, the first words out of our mouth that initiate our day in our physical bodies, is acknowledging the spiritual aspect of our neshamas, our ruach, and our nefesh inside us, a very special Kiddush cup. Okay, I'm gonna take a break in about 5 minutes and answer more questions. This is what George was making reference to. 3 times a day, we recite the Amidah. Now, I wanna make sure that everyone knows, I'm gonna take a break from the page. I'm gonna ask some questions. And if you've ever been in a Shiva house that I taught, you should know this, because I have made this part of the curriculum of almost every single Shiva house. I want to ask you, it's not a rhetorical question. I want you to shout out the answers. The first one, it's a trick question. What is the oldest part that we recite in a Siddur? What's the oldest part? Not the oldest prayer. It's a trick question. And the answer is, anyone know? Shema. Because the Shema is a quotation from the Torah. The Torah was written 3,000 years ago. What is the oldest prayer? The Shema is not a prayer. It's a quotation. It's a declaration. It's a quote from the Torah. The oldest prayer.
Isn't it the Elenu?
Nope. The Amida.
Mira.
Okay.
Wait,
So you
and
guys
then
threw
the-
out some goodies. For those of you who threw out Kaddish, the proof about Kaddish, it's in Aramaic. Aramaic is not Hebrew. Aramaic is the language we spoke about 2,000 years ago. In the time of the Romans, not in the time of the Greeks. We weren't speaking Aramaic in the time of the Greeks. The Chashmonaim, Sefer Chashmonaim, the book of the Maccabees, is in Hebrew. Okay, we spoke in Hebrew in Israel, but by the Roman times, we're already speaking Aramaic. So that's around only 2,000 years old. George, what was your question? Aleinu? Aleinu is pretty old. You're right. It's approximately in the prayer book, Machzor Vitri and the Machzor of the Sadia Gaon, which is 1,500 years old, 1,400 years old. There's Aleinu in there. And Aleinu is in the Siddur because it was part of the ritual in the Azara on the high holidays. So George is very correct. It is a very old prayer. It is in the Machzor Vitri and the Machzor Sadia Gaon. And it is believed, the Talmud says, that we sang it as part of the ritual in the Azara. Okay, however, the oldest prayer, tefillah, is the Amidah. And it was codified in the various forms it was made. Okay, this is it. By the Anshe Knesset Hagadol, the members of the Great Assembly, the Great Sanhedrin, 350 BCE.
Wow.
Now, here's the interesting thing. It was codified 350 BCE. It was in use for hundreds of years before then in various forms. And that's why the rabbis finally said, the Sanhedrin said, look, they use this word here in the north and they use this phrase in the south. We got to have one system. So they codified it. They made it, what's the correct term? Universal. Said, no. From now on, we're not going to use that word. We're going to use this word. We're not going to do this. We're going to do that. Okay. That was done 350 BCE. Okay. So that's why this is definitively, that's why, by the way, in the Talmud, the Amidah is called Ha-Tefillah, the prayer. Not the Shema. Whenever in the Talmud it talks about the prayer, we're talking about the Amidah, because it is the oldest and it is the first one that we all agreed on. Okay, so now that you understand its importance, let's go to the Amidah. Okay, you all see my pointer moving? If you want, you can follow in the English, but I'm going to go right from the Hebrew. Ata gibor le'olam Hashem. You are Lord, are mighty. B'chayei meitim. You give life to those who have died. Okay, right there. That's what it literally means. Now, I'm going to stop for just a second. Remember I told you the Reform movement doesn't believe in life after death? And this is the proof. In the Reform prayer book, it's called Gates of Prayer. They have changed these words. They changed a lot of words. For example, wherever it says Abraham, they add Sarah. So for example, it says, Baruch atah Hashem Magen Avraham. V'pokei Sarah. They add, wherever they say Avram, they mention Sarah. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu v'Elokei Avoteinu v'Imoteinu. God of our fathers and our mothers. Elokei Avraham, Elokei Yitzchak, Elokei Yaakov. God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Okay, sorry, and God of Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah. So that's also a major change. Wherever it mentions men, they mention women. Wherever it mentions Avram, they mention Sarah. Now, the theological change is they remove the words Mechaye Hametim. They remove all reference to life after death, and they put in a very beautiful sentiment, but is not consistent with the cause. Mechaye Hakol. Baruch atah Hashem Mechaye Hakol, which means you, our Lord, give life to everything. They don't say you give life to the dead. They say you give life to everything, which is a beautiful sentiment, and it's true. But it's not the 2,500-year-old theological, spiritual statement that God grants us life after death. So let's return to the text. And I'm going to start again. Atah gibor le'olam Hashem. You, O Lord, are mighty forever. Mechaye metim. You give life to those who have died. Atah rab lo shia. You will give great salvation. Bechakel chayim bechesed. You sustain everything, all life with compassion. Mechaye metim. You give life to those who have died. By the way, let's count. That's the second time. Barachamim rabim. With great compassion, with great mercy. Somech noflim. You lift up those who are fallen. Rofei cholim. You heal the sick. Matir asurim. You set imprisoned people free. Mekayem emunato lishnei afar. You keep faith with those who sleep in the dust. So I'm going to take a break there. First of all, when you lower a person into the grave, what do we say? You know, you've heard me say it a million times. Our bodies return unto the dust from whence we all are formed, but our souls return to God who's given us life. It's from the book of Isaiah. Plus, you ever hear the saying, dust to dust, ashes to ashes? So whenever the Torah says dust, what are we talking about? Death, the grave. That's what dust means, okay? Did you ever hear the saying, oh, I love that person, but they passed away? Oh, into the next room? No, whenever you say passed away, everyone knows what you mean. What does it mean?
Died.
He kicked the bucket. They kicked the bucket? No, you know. They kicked the bucket. Let's kick the bucket. So the Shnei Afar, throughout the Torah, Afar means people who sleep in the dust. Who sleeps in the dust? When you die, you sleep in the dust. Okay? There's only one problem. Sleep? Why did they use? Because sleep, you go to sleep, and what do you do in the morning? You wake up. Okay? That's why it says Lishnei Afar. You had a horrible day, you're exhausted, you're tired, you pay your taxes, you pay your bills, you fight with the children, fight with the wife, you got indigestion, okay, a bad day. You go to sleep, you wake up, new day. I don't have heartburn. I made up with my spouse. My children said their apologies. Okay, great. It's a new beginning. That's what Lishnei Afar means. God keeps faith with those who sleep in the dust. It means death is not permanent. You go to sleep because the next morning is a new beginning. Okay, that was 3. Who is like unto you but you? Who is compared to you? Who is mighty like you? Melech meimit umechaye. Very important. The God who gives death and then brings life. Let's see how the English is. Causes death and then restores life. So most importantly, when I teach this in the Shiva house, I emphasize the order. It should say, God who's given life and now has brought death. Nope, it's not what it says. It says Melech Meimit, the God who gives death, Umechaye, and then brings life. Why? Because that's what we believe. death, and then there's life. Umatzmiach Yeshua, and then salvation flowers and it springs forth. And we have faith that you will give life to those who have died. That's 5. And then the bracha or the Messiah, Baruch atah Hashem, blessed are you, our God, Mechaye hametim. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, you give life to those who have died. So that's 6 times in the introductory paragraph that we make a statement that we believe in life after death. Now, how many times a day do we recite the Amida? 3 times. What's 3 times 6?
18.
How many times a day does a Jew make a statement he believes in life after death? 18 times. What a coincidence. High times, 18 times a day, we make a statement that there's this life and a life to come. Now there's someone there. George and Ahuva both have their hand up. How about Ahuva, because she hasn't gone yet?
I wanted to bring out something that you had in the prayer before the last slide.
What? Go ahead.
About returning the neshama. If you can bring it up, maybe. Can you show that slide, please?
Okay, hold on a second. The previous slide.
Yeah. The one before. There you go. So I think that from here, we can see also that there is some belief in resurrection, because you will return the soul to me. Who is me? Where is the cup that's going to hold that soul? If after dying, you know, obviously that cup is.
Okay. So you're almost there. It's actually one of the sources for Gilgul, reincarnation. Good, very good. Right. Excellent, excellent point. Excellent point. George, you had your hand up, and also someone chatted a question. So George, did you want to ask?
Okay, in back to the Amida, when we get to the Modim, right? We say Hanishashanu Lach, our souls who belong to you. Isn't that a reference to that our souls belong to God?
And we're grateful for that soul. Modima nachnu lach. We are grateful to you. We acknowledge you. Right. Absolutely. Judaism emphasizes throughout the davening process that we acknowledge that there's intellect, there's also soul, and a physical body. Now, someone sent the chat, and I didn't understand the question. Miriam, where, you asked the question where? Miriam? Well, where is what?
No, no, okay. I have a comment. When we were talking about Jesus and resurrection, etc., etc. And you're saying that well, that has not been proven. When we talk about our soul, that, you know, we incarnate or we go someplace else, couldn't that be what, you know, that it is all about? It's not a resurrection. It's like we migrate someplace else, and they took it that way. But we really, what we do is like we go to a different level to be born again in a different body or something like this, or it's not well said.
So you're absolutely, you know, we're going to be actually covering this in weeks to come. For example, you should know that there isn't a consensus among the different Kabbalistic schools
Mhm.
about what happens when we die. So for example, some actually talk about heaven, and others talk about Olam Haba, and other ones talk about Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden. And is it euphemisms? Are they allegorical? Are they the same? And then they're talking about resurrection of the dead, which means the dead come back to life. Wait a minute, in the physical world?
Mhm.
I thought you exist in heaven. So if you're in heaven, when I teach this to people, I explain actually resurrection is a punishment. It's like graduating college and having to go back to junior high school, right?
That's a Kabbalistic way to think too, right? That's, like when you were explaining about being the cup and the wine, it's like Kabbalistically also, like our bodies here are the ones that hold the soul, and you go and come back until, like, you come back so many times as you really learn, and everything that you have to, I don't know how to say it, but until you become really, your soul is very pure, so then you don't come back. Is that true?
I'm not exactly sure I understand the question.
It's like,
I know
you-
what she's talking about. I know, Miriam, what you're talking about. They believe that you come here to repair yourself, okay?
exactly,
Okay, and once
to
you came
repair,
here
that's
and
the word.
repaired yourself, and you come one Gilgul and another until you saw it. So they say, like, when babies pass away, like little, very, very young, that they fulfill their purpose on this earth, or they repair, their soul is fixed by then, and it's taken away. By that point, it's not being returned anymore. There is no return of the soul. Is that what you're talking about, Miriam?
Yeah, it's repair was the word that I was looking for. Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm pretty sure we're going to cover it in the future, and I'm not for some reason I'm not grasping. I think you're just talking about the concept of Gilgul and incompletion of a soul's mission.
Exactly.
If I'm not mistaken, and we are going to definitely cover that. So actually, Harriet asked a question. Harriet asks the question, do the Reform not recite the second paragraph of the Amida? It's full of coming back from death. So in the gates of prayer, and in fact, I think I just tried finding it real quickly, and it's not coming up, but basically, let me try one more thing. Sometimes it happens to me that when I have too many windows open, it doesn't find the page I need. So if you give me a second, I'm going to start closing the pages, and that will definitely help me. So what I found initially, just Googling real quickly, was the first paragraph of the Amida, and again, it does say, yeah. Hold on a second, maybe if I close this. Let's try it again.
Actually, I think they don't say the second paragraph.
So here, this is from the Amida, and if you can see right here, in the blue, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu Elokei Avotenu Elokei Avraham Elokei Yitzchak Elokei Yaakov, and then in the blue, Elokei Sa Rivka, Elokei Rivka, Elokei Rachel, Elokei Leah. And then here it says, V'zacher Chazdei Avot and Imaot. Wherever it says fathers, they put in the matriarchs. And then at the bottom of the bracha, Magen Avraham V'Poked Sarah. So as you could see, oh damn, now it's not letting me go to the next page. Let me try it one more time. Okay, so I found it a minute ago, and in the, at least online, it validates that in the Gates of Prayer, which is the Reform, but they might have new additions, but at least the one that I found confirms that that in the Amida, they have Mechaye Hakol. Let's see if I can find it. Here's an alternative. So again, Chavra, yep, there it is, and it won't share it. You know what? Maybe the,
That'll be my homework.
all right. I'm sorry, Chavra, I can't seem to
Rabbi,
get it to come up. Yes, other questions, go ahead.
you know, with respect to that, in the Reform movement, they consider that the Gates of Prayer, the book, is more important than the Torah. So, I mean, I remember having these discussions when I was on the ritual committee of a Reform synagogue, and I couldn't understand how they could put that over the Torah. So, since they don't believe the Torah, you must, you know, is the word of God, they fashion for the time, you know, for the time that they're living in, what's important of the Torah and change it accordingly.
Well, you know, before there was the Gates of Prayer, they had what was called the Union Prayer Book, which was basically an English hymnal. I have a copy in my office if anyone would like to see it. There are 5 pages of Hebrew in the original Union Prayer Book. My edition is from like 1922, I think. And
Wow.
it's very interesting in that respect. So regardless. All right, well, Chevra, I'll do my best to find that for next week so we can just have validation of it. I hope everyone enjoyed class. And we're going to continue amongst the subject matter is going to be life after death, resurrection, Gilgul, reincarnation, where does the soul reside upon death, things like is there a heaven, is there a hell, things of that nature. All right, Chevra. Wait, I see Jonathan, you have your hand up. I'll stick around, I'm in no rush.
That's my thumbs up, thumbs up.
Oh, thumbs up, okay.
Good job, meaning
Right,
hope you
right.
like it. I like it.
I loved it. Amazing class, Rabbi. Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank you
joining
very
us.
much.
A very good turnout.
Looking
Excellent.
forward
Hey,
to the
Thank
next
you very
group.
much, Rabbi.
By the way, you guys want to see something amazing that happened in synagogue today?
Okay.
Something
You're going to show them the star? You're going to show them the star?
Yes. Yeah, I'm going to show you a star. Wait until you see this, guys. Let's see if I can pull it up. Okay, give me a second. We
Really?
took down,
Oh,
The,
Eli just told me.
yeah, so wait until you see this, guys. Very few people have seen this. So let's see if it'll come up. Here it is. We took down the ceiling,
Oh, my God.
and in the ceiling, behind the
Oh
ceiling,
my
was a
God.
Star of
Wow.
David that I had
Wow.
heard rumors about from Rabbi
Beautiful.
Abramowitz.
So
That the
pretty.
star was a skylight and that it used to leak. So they just sealed it. Now,
Wow.
Manny doesn't think it goes all the way through, but we're going to find out. But
Wow.
see, this is where the ark was here on the bottom.
Yeah.
And here is these L-shaped things are the brackets that held up the ceiling.
Right.
And behind it, this is what we found.
I hope
See?
you can revive it, bring it
Yeah,
back.
we
Gorgeous.
can. We can if we get enough supporters to contribute to do it.
Yeah, it's going to be another $100,000 to do it.
Ah, good.
Okay.
Let's get a new one. Rabbi, they always thought that was a conspiracy theory, and look at that.
Wait a second, question. I have a question. It looks like an opening. Is it an opening or
Yeah,
it's
it was
just
a skyline. That's why.
it was okay. my understanding is that the real Orthodox, and you know, when you have a Jewish wedding, you have to do it under the stars, right? Isn't
Possible,
that the
but
way?
Nice.
what I would
I don't
love
know.
is that, you see, the only issue is like over that, this is not the roof. This is also see this where I'm moving this? This is
Facade.
also a dropped ceiling. See these these lights?
Mm-hmm.
They are
Yeah.
also, this is the original recessed lighting.
Right.
So
Wow.
we're not sure if this is just attached to the ceiling or did it go straight through?
I must say something, you know, we call it the Star of David, but it is Magen David. Magen is the protector, it protects us. And I think it hiddenly was behind the scene protecting our community, which I think we put it this way. And we should keep it there and may it protect us for many years to come.
Thank you.
Amen.
Wow. It's
Well,
beautiful.
you know, I spent 2 hours with Manny Stanilovsky. He's a genius. He's the architect, Cuban Jew. That his family went to Puerto Rico. From Puerto Rico, he's come to Miami as a young man, went to universities here. He's a genius. He's brilliant. And he's only done 9 synagogues, only.
I thought those panels we had were because of the echo.
They were. That's why they put them up there, because it was they had a serious problem with echo.
I've had too.
And that's why they covered the star. Rabbi Brown said they also was leaking. I don't know how it was, if it went to through the ceiling and into the roof, then I can understand why it was leaking. But if it's merely a construct attached to the ceiling, I don't understand why it was leaking. But we'll find out.
Well, if there was an echo, maybe we won't need microphones if we leave it open, or
No. There's no way. Actually, echo is very bad. Echo means that everyone can hear everyone speak. And it's actually a problem. You know how people complain it's noisy on Rosh Hashanah?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be infinitely worse. Now, the good news is that science and technology has advanced just a little bit in 60 years. And they now have microphones that you place throughout the sanctuary and they nullify echo. And they hesitate the repetition of the signal. So it's like a quarter of a second off, a minuscule amount of in each section, so it doesn't echo anymore. It's all science and technology. And the good news is there's nothing wrong with doing it on Shabbat, so it's all good. Well, Chevra, I hope you enjoyed class.
Yes.
We had well over 35 people. It's a good class. Actually, we even had a lot of doubles and triples. So I hope you enjoyed, and God willing, tomorrow morning minyan is at 8:30.
Okay.
Thank you, Rabbi.
And
Thank you,
tomorrow we have
Rabbi.
a Torah class. Tomorrow, Torah class at Lunch and Learn at 12. Okay, guys?
Wonderful.
Thank you,
Thank
Rabbi.
you, Rabbi.
Very
All
good,
right,
Rabbi.
Lila,
Yeah.
take care.
Laila tov.
Lila Tov.